All right, everybody, welcome back to yet another episode of the one and only Form Check Friday. Now, for anybody who's new to this series or might have clicked on this video as their first exposure to Form Check Friday, let me tell you really quick what it is. Y'all, our subscribers, the people out there in YouTube land, send in lifting videos to myself, a seasoned powerlifter and powerlifting coach of many years, and I put you up on the screen behind me. I offer my technical advice. I try to answer all of your questions, help fix technique, and just make everybody who submits and who wants to be a better lifter a bit better. So if you're interested in submitting, let me show you real quick how. What you can do is head over to our website here. This is calgarybarbell.com. You're going to click on FCF. You can obviously check out the training app there if you're interested. There's 30 some programs on there. You get form checks, all that good stuff, private Discord, etc. If you're interested solely in Form Check Friday, you're just going to scroll down a little bit and go in here. Fill all of this in, and honestly, the more info and comments you can give us in this box here, a little bit about yourself, whether you struggle with some things in your lifts, all that kind of stuff. Any context at all helps me do a better job, helps me give you a little bit more relevant information in a lot of cases, so be sure to not skip that part of things. Now, with that being said, each week we leave off with the lifter. We let the commenters and our community fill out the comments section, giving their critiques on the lifter, and then we start the next week with said lifter. And that lifter this week is Andre. So Andre is doing some squats here, as you may be able to tell. And let's tell you a little bit about Andre. 21 years old, training for about a year, powerlifting for about 4 months. Plans to compete, but working on 1,000-pound total. And I have some comments on that. And this is a squat single at 145 kilos. He says it was a PR, but definitely had more in the tank. And he also said that his lower back started to tense up, although he didn't feel any pain or discomfort the next morning. So first things first, let's talk a little bit about this plans to compete, but working on 1,000-pound total. That's cool. That's fine if you want to work towards that 1,000-pound total, but I would say don't handcuff yourself to that as a I can't compete until I'm good enough to do 1,000-pound total kind of concept. I would strongly discourage that. If you have any interest at all in competing, get out there, get under the bar, enter your first competition. I promise you're going to have the time of your life, probably fall in love with it and meet a lot of amazing, awesome people. So, if you're using that as a I don't want to compete till I'm strong enough thing, I'm here to tell you nay. Go ahead and compete. So all that out of the way, we're going to get into the actual squat itself. So first off, congrats on a PR. That's awesome. It does look like you had a little bit more in the tank. And honestly, your squat overall looks quite good, but I think one of the reasons we might be feeling a little bit of low back discomfort, even temporarily, is that we're really doing a lot to try to extend the back throughout the lift. If we watch these frames as you come out of the bottom, so on the descent, torso looks pretty well neutral range-ish. And then we get to the bottom, go nice and slow here. And on the way up, one of the things we're doing is we're really trying to drive the chest up. Now, another really great person for information in the YouTube powerlifting world, his name's David Wilson. He just made a video about the idea or cue of chest up. I haven't checked it out yet, but the guy makes a lot of really good stuff, and I would absolutely recommend checking it out. Probably a lot of what we're going to talk about here. So when we get this really exaggerated kind of chest up, not only does it contribute to usually this kind of a sticking point around this sort of mid-range of the squat, because we're focusing more on back extension than we are on just pushing with the legs. So it stalls the progress of the bar. We run into these hard sticking points, and in some cases, yeah, we get a little bit of additional fatigue, resulting in some low back discomfort. Now, it's probably not anything to worry about, so I'm not trying to scare you or tell you that you're going to hurt yourself or break your back. But what I would do is try to just maybe adjust your gaze down slightly so that your head isn't quite so upright, and pull your ribs down on top of your abs. Now, I talk about that a lot, and sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. But basically what I'm trying to do is, if you were to sit there and just breathe out all of your air, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, eventually you'll feel your ribs start to like pull down on top of your abs. That's the kind of contraction we want from your abdominal muscles, and then we want to breathe into that without pushing that rib cage back up. So maybe that's a good explanation. Hopefully that makes sense. The other thing we want to do is just be a little bit patient and just press with the legs, right? So keep this down here. I know it might feel like you're falling forward, or it might feel like, you know, maybe we're in a whole bunch of flexion, which, you know, is another sort of scapegoat for a lot of injuries. But I'm here to tell you that if you practice that kind of bracing, and we practice that like more neutral range positioning, yeah, our chest is probably going to go from here to here, because right now we're in this position, so we're going to end up a little more like this. But we're going to eliminate that excessive sticking point. We're going to have a lot smoother squat, and we're probably going to have a little bit more comfort or a lack of discomfort, based on the fact that we're not really, you know, driving through a whole bunch of low back extension with a bunch of weight on the bar. Now, you can get strong at that just like you can get strong at anything else, but it may be more efficient to work on your bracing. So that's my recommendation, Andre. I hope that helps you, and all the best of luck. Again, congrats on the PR. Now, we move on to Elias. Now, Elias is doing some deadlifts here. Elias is from Germany, so shout outs to my German followers and friends. I have a client from Germany, so shout out Patrick if you're watching. And yeah, so Elias has been lifting 7 or 8 years, powerlifting for 4 or 5, just running some sort of template programs right now. 102 kilos body weight, a lot of good information here from Elias. Now he's looking to do a competition in the future. He says he struggles the most with his deadlifts. He notices, and this is the first thing I noticed too, is that his hips rise off the floor, right? So you can see his hips come up behind him, causing the shoulder blades to fall forward. He says that he noticed that you know, puts him out of position and causes him to lose position, right? And then he also mentioned that he feels like his arms bend a little bit. So yeah, we can kind of see that, a little bit of like pulling with the arms, a little bit of that elbow flexion there. So we're gonna try to break this down and see what exactly happens. So we can go nice and slow here. Basically, I think the hip rise is probably the biggest culprit, because when we set up, let's see where we start trying to apply pressure to the bar, about here, right? So when we set up here, we have the shoulder blade kind of, you know, directly above the bar. I can't draw a great straight line, but this is also kind of an oblique angle, so forgive me. I like this hip height here, but you can see as we start, ooh, that hip height changes a lot. So one of the things I would do is I would practice some pause deadlifts, and I would practice just being more patient off the floor. A lot of the times when the hips come up, it's because the bar feels glued to the floor. It's very hard, and often will shift the sort of most difficult part of the lift to the initiation off the floor when we have really good tension off the floor, when we have good patience, when we're pushing the bar and not losing that torso angle. When we keep all those things in line, it feels like 1,000,000 pounds before it breaks the floor. But the patience cue is a really good one, because if we can stay patient and just keep pushing without letting the hips come up to sort of compensate, get us into a stiff-legged position and allow us perhaps a little bit better leverage for this part of the lift, then we're going to be rewarded with a smoother lift throughout, and generally a much better consistency with heavy loads. So not only would I practice some pause deadlifts, the other thing I do is I would maybe ratchet your training weights back a little bit. You know, incorporate what I would call a technical RPE. And, you know, we can talk about RPE and rating of perceived exertion, basically like how hard a set is and rating that per set. Most of the time, it's referred to in a very strict sense of how many more reps could you do, right? And you might be able to do a lot more reps, but they might not be very good quality. So I want you to start thinking about your RPE in terms of how many more good to decent quality reps could I do, right? Mike T a long time ago gave me this heuristic, or had put out this sort of heuristic or general guideline. If you can do 80% of your work with 80% good technique, you're good, right? That's probably about as sort of nitpicky and meticulous as we need to be. We also need to understand that we need to push in order to receive, you know, those blessed adaptations and strength gains. So we do need to strain against the weight, but we need to take into account that the strength and the exhibition of strength is a skill, right? we need to be able to do it properly and do it well. Sorry, I shouldn't say properly, but do it well. And that's going to be an individual thing, which is why I think the properly, improperly dichotomy doesn't really exist. Anyways, I digress. In this instance, I think pulling back your training weight to something where you can use what I would consider a technical RPE. Again, how many more reps could you do with decent or good technique? And, just practice being more patient, practice pushing the bar off the floor. Another exercise, more of a sort of like SPE or like less specific special preparatory exercise that I would maybe implement would be a snatch grip conventional deadlift. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring your hips much lower. It's going to put you in essentially the same start position as a weightlifter would have doing a snatch. And because your hips are so low, you're really going to feel the difference between being able to push and use your quads and maintain a good back position off the floor versus seeing those hips fly up, because they're really going to go up in a snatch grip deadlift. I would do those probably light, somewhere around the 60% range, and in the like 6 to 8 rep range maybe. So you could try implementing some of those different things I've listed there to work on your positioning off the floor. But in any case, I think the big thing is going to be practicing it effectively and properly, doing the technique and cultivating the technique that you want in your competition deadlifts, usually by probably pulling back on the weight a little bit. So I hope that helps, and best of luck to you, Elias. Up next, we have Rasmus. Rasmus is doing some bench. Let me crop this a little bit better. There we go. Now, Rasmus said he moved his grip width in to better stack his elbows and wrists like John Hack. And he says he still seems to fold his elbow too far. And I think what he's talking about is this sort of tucking of the elbows here. And I would agree, this is probably too far tucked. So, number one, the first thing I'm going to touch on, I'll let this play in the background, but the first thing I want to touch on is just because your favorite lifter does it, or just because a very good lifter does it, does not necessarily mean that that cue or that approach to lifting is going to work for you. I've seen this time and time and time and time again. Now, this isn't to fault you. I think it's actually a smart thing sometimes to look at other lifters, but there needs to be a sort of filter on the lifters that you're looking at. They need to be lifters that are like you, either in body weight, in proportion, in, sort of the tendencies of style, whether it's like a high bar or low bar squat, stance width, that kind of stuff. You need to have an inclination of what's good and comfortable and efficient for you, and then start comparing that to other people that lift in a similar way to make small adjustments, or at least give you a sort of, a scent on the trail to kind of track to see if those other things are going to work good for you, or work well for you, sorry. Now, with this, I don't necessarily think that your grip is off. I don't think your grip is too narrow. I think for the most part on the descent, that first bit here from the lockout to the chest looks really good. Great. So far, great rep. What happens here, though, is we really lose tension in the upper back, in the shoulders, in the pecs, just overall on the chest. And we see this get more and more exaggerated as the set wears on. So I'm going to play this one more time. You see that little dip there, right? We pause, and then we have this little dip of the bar before we press. So we're essentially releasing or lessening the leg drive and then reactivating the leg drive. We're lessening and diminishing the upper body tightness and then restarting it off the chest. And I think that might be your biggest culprit here, because for the most part your descent again looks good, but on this rep we really sink, and then when we push up, the bar goes out this way, or at the very least straight up, doesn't come back, and causes this big lag off the chest, right? We see the bar kind of wanting to drift out this way, and then, we catch it and we push it back. And then it goes well from there. Same thing here. So with this one, we really sink in. So that's another thing. We're altering and changing the amount of depth we're sinking to on the chest from rep to rep. These are not consistent. These are not the same. So number one, let's get some consistency. If we're going to sink the same all the time, as much as we can, be consistent. If we're going to loosen the leg drive and loosen the upper body, well, I would recommend probably keeping some more back tension so that we can at least have a good stable sort of base against the bench So when we start the press, we actually have something to push off of instead of completely relaxing kind of the whole upper body. And part of the reason we're getting this excessive tuck here is because we're stopping and then restarting the press, right? We sink in again here, and then when we go to press, we're like tightening the lats and squeezing the elbows in towards the sides. And I just think that mechanic is not really working for you. So I might actually recommend you go 180 and go consistent leg drive, light touch on the chest, don't sink, you know, have a good, stable, tight press and press from a dead stop, at least as an accessory movement to sort of explore that and see if there's some worth in practicing those skills in that way, because we certainly seem to have a very choppy drive off the chest. You know, from here to wherever your touch point is, however deep it might go on that rep, is just not consistent. It's choppy. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I would try to work on, is tightening up that bottom position, trying to be more consistent, trying not to dip after the pause, because if you're in a competition, you're going to get called for that, I promise you. And just work on more consistency, work on more control, work on keeping the weight of the bar more in your hands and less resting on your chest. When we talk about the heavy touch bench press, a lot of the times there's, you know, it's going to be a matter of maybe like percentages, right? How much of the weight is resting on the chest? How much of the weight is resting in the hands? And you might want to play with that percentage. I'm recommending more weight staying in your hands for the sake of more control and consistency. All right. I hope that helps, Rasmus, and best of luck with your bench press. And now we have Kotaro, and Kotaro is pulling 455. He mentioned this felt like about a 9 RPE, and the big points, big things that Kotaro mentioned here were that he wants to fix his upper back rounding, and he thought that his lockout felt a little iffy. So let's watch this through one more time. Start from the start here. And I want everybody watching to take a look at this, you know, think about it, maybe watch through it a few times. And I want you all to put on your coaching hats. And I want you to head down to the comments section below, and I want you to give me your best advice for Kotaro. And hopefully Kotaro's watching this, and he's going to go down to the comments section. He's going to get a good idea of a whole whack of super helpful stuff to go and try and check out and mess with. And I'm going to start next week's video with Kotaro. Now, if you liked this video, make sure to leave a like, put something in the comments, hit the subscribe button, notification bell, all that stuff goes a long ways. And if you really like us and want to support us, head over to calgarybarbell.com and check out our coaching app. You can apply for coaching with one of the Calgary Barbell coaches if you're an aspiring powerlifter. And yeah, we're happy to do this stuff. So we hope you all enjoyed it. I'll see everybody very soon. Next week, at least, we're starting the vlogs back up. We got all kinds of fun news that'll be in those. And I'm going to stop talking. Bye-bye. Have a good weekend, everybody. See ya.